Hello and welcome to Techiechap. Well, it's good to be back. I have been suffering from man flu for the last couple of weeks, which was pretty bad, but I've finally got my voice back and I'm back. So, without further ado, we are going to be taking a look at the latest release of Ubuntu Budgie. That's Ubuntu Budgie 22.10. Let's find out how I got on after the intro. And here we are. This is the Ubuntu Budgie desktop that greets you after running through the standard Ubuntu installer. And it's a very straightforward installation, as you would expect with Ubuntu, and really not much to it. If you've ever installed Ubuntu before, you will know what to expect. So you do get this very nice Budgie welcome window, which I do like. I like these welcome screens on these distros. I think it just gives a nice introduction to the system, and the way that it shows you around is quite nice. So you get a nice little introduction explaining that it's about simplicity and elegance, and then explaining a little bit more about Ubuntu Budgie. Of course, the Budgie desktop really came from the development of the Solus distribution, and the idea behind the Solus distribution was really the desktop getting out of the way, but still having an elegant and easy to use desktop. And I've got to say, first impressions of Budgie desktop on Ubuntu is it does look really quite slick. One of the things I appreciate even off the bat here is that the widget is actually integrated into the desktop. So if I click on this clock and calendar here, I don't actually get any options. It is actually part of the desktop, and for me that's quite nice. It's quite neat, because sometimes when there are widgets on the desktop and they're not properly integrated with the desktop, it's just sitting on top of it, can be easy to accidentally click on a widget rather than the thing that you are actually trying to click on. So it's quite nice that it is really integrated there. It explains here that Ubuntu Budgie is a stable, easy to use operating system with a configurable desktop environment. It is ideal for those who want the most out of their computers and prefer a traditional desktop metaphor. With modest hardware requirements, it is suitable for modern desktops and laptops alike. Apologies for the still slightly croaky throat after my bout of man flu. So immediately from the off here, you get the option to install software, and then you get this nice makeovers and layout option here. But first I'll just show you the Ubuntu Budgie website, where you actually download Ubuntu Budgie from. And if I just go up to here, it's ubuntubudgie.org, and they've made it really nice and clear. So you simply go to download there, and it will take you straight to the download page. So it is based on this version is based on the 22.10 Ubuntu release, which is the very latest release of Ubuntu. And as you can see, it's supported from October 2022 to July 2023. So it's only a 9-month support schedule on this, and that's because it's not based on the LTS release of Ubuntu. But for me, if you've seen my review of the LTS release of Ubuntu, you'll probably realize that for me that's quite a good thing that it's not based on the LTS, because I have not been impressed with the LTS release of Ubuntu. So far, the 22.10 release of Ubuntu and this version of Budgie has appeared to be pretty stable. I've run it for a couple of days just playing around with it, and it does appear to be fairly stable. but let's just run through what we have here. As you can see, actually, Firefox integrates well with the rest of this dark theme desktop. If I just close this down, you'll see there's a consistency about the icon controls here, which is quite nice. The top bar, if we just talk through that, you get a very nice applets and notifications bar that is the full screen, the full screen long, and but it looks really nice, and I believe this is called the Raven notifications. I'm not sure if that's still the name of it, but that looks quite nice, and it's nice that you can tuck it away there. You've got your power, logging off and logging on, etc. there, and then you've got your standard kind of notifications panel or bar here, where you can select your network. You've got a link to your alarms and things like that, or any alerts. You've got places up here. You've got a nice little quick note application here. Spaces, you can basically select different spaces here. That's quite nice. And then you've got your application indicator. And in the center here, you have your time. So that doesn't open a calendar as sometimes you would ordinarily expect, but it does open the system time and date settings. There is no right clicking on this top bar here, which is quite interesting. If you click over here on the left, this will take you to your applications, and you do get quite a few applications actually bundled in with Ubuntu Budgie 22.10. So you do get LibreOffice bundled in. You get I've installed OBS Studio to record this. The dock down here is based on Plank. You've got your software center. You can control your software sources, your software updater, startup applications. You can control how your previews are displayed within the file manager, which is quite nice. Thunderbird Mail, the very, very decent Tilix as well, which is a great terminal manager for Linux. Really, really nice, very feature rich, which I really like. System monitor is your kind of standard system monitor, and actually when you open it, you actually see that it says the Mate version of system monitor here. So it looks like they've kind of forgotten to remove that logo there, but so you can see more information about what I'm running, which is 22.10, Kinetic Kudu. Kernel Linux is 5.19.023. A little bit more information on the hardware I'm running this on, which is obviously my Dell Latitude E7440. So yeah, it's all quite nice. You get a few little games as well in there. So quite a few applications that come with it, including Gpod, a podcast client, radio player called Good Vibes. I'll just show you that. That's quite neat too. It does work in the UK if you're watching this from the UK. That does seem to link in quite nicely. Obviously not sure about other parts of the world. Sometimes you get these radio players bundled in and they don't work in certain parts of the world, so it does feel like a bit of a extra thing that you don't need. The drawing application, which is really a version of Paint, slightly more sophisticated than Windows Paint. The file manager as well is interesting. It's not immediately clear what version of file manager this is. However, if I just, let's see if I can bring the menu up now. No, I can't bring the menu up. This is actually a version of Nemo that is installed, which actually is a bit different from the default GNOME window manager. And I mention GNOME because Budgie, for me, is really like a refined version of GNOME, or GNOME as perhaps it should be called. It's like GNOME with a lot stripped out and stripped down, and indeed, as per their mission statement on their website, Budgie is kind of like the refined version of GNOME. It doesn't have a lot of the extras. Going back to this Ubuntu Budgie welcome screen, you get makeover and layouts, and here's where there is a bit of a difference again with GNOME. Whilst the GNOME apps can work on this Budgie desktop, you can change the appearance of this desktop quite easily. So they've got things like arc design, material design, Vimix, Mojave, which is clearly a bit of a Mac OS kind of clone, Pachillo, White Sur, Quaggear, Budgie. So yeah, they've got different layouts here, which in itself is quite useful. So you can see from the previews as well that actually they're quite useful as well there. Then you've got desktop layout, so you can choose what version of desktop you're running, whether you want it to be classic Ubuntu Budgie or a Redmond type layout. So your menu is down the bottom there, 11 like Windows 11, a Chrome effect, or the one as in like Unity style. So there's quite a few layouts here that you can very easily apply, and you just click on install and it applies it straight away. So that's quite nice in and of itself. This Budgie welcome screen is version 0.18.5. If I click on install software, it immediately comes up with some nice little categories. So for example, if I go to Budgie extras, this bit's quite nice. Here you can you've got some that are already installed, and these things, these little things in the system tray up the top here are actually little applets. So you can add more applets in there. So for example, you can add a clipboard applet or a calendar applet, and so on. And there's quite a few, there's quite a selection here that you can go through, which are all quite nice, and they're all geared towards tailoring the desktop experience to the way you would like it to be. So you can have a take a break applet if you don't want to be disturbed, for example. All these are very, very nice. I do like the clean effect of the windows here. It is very does feel very slick and very together. Down here on the dock, this simply brings up the Budgie welcome screen again, so that brings that up back to where you were. It's got some tips here on how to get started, so you've got things like keyboard shortcuts and things like that. You've also got links to LibreOffice Writer and LibreOffice Calc. If we go to Firefox again, and we just look at the version of Firefox included, we should see that this is the very latest version of Firefox 106, which is fantastic. And if we go to the software store, it's still on the OBS, you can see it's the GNOME software store. But what's interesting about this, unlike for example the LTS version of the software manager, if for example I click on Kden Live here, you'll see that actually the default is not to go to Snap, but is actually the deb file. And I found that with OBS as well. So if I go to OBS, okay, and then I click on that, and the default to install is actually the deb file. So it seems like there's been some thought process behind the applications that are presented through the software manager. So if they deem that the deb file is more stable than the snap, then because Ubuntu of course really heavily endorses snap, then they put the deb file, it seems like they put the deb file first, which actually I like the fact that there has been some thought put behind this in terms of giving you a stable experience, because that was one of the big things for me with the LTS release of Ubuntu, was that snap was so heavily pushed as your sort of default mechanism for installing applications. And of course you could really tailor your system to take snap out, but the fact that it's kind of pushed on you from the start there, that was one of the things that I really didn't like, because snaps particularly on this system really slowed my system down and were particularly unstable when it came to things like OBS. So I'm pleased to see, I'm not sure if it's a 22.10 or a Budgie decision, but the deb files seem to be pushed a little bit more than the snap files. In saying that, the snap files are still available. So for example, if I click on Kden Live, you can see that the snap files are still there, and you even get access to some of the beta ones as well. So if we just find the tilex for the console manager, let's just see how much memory is actually being used by Ubuntu Budgie with nothing else running on the desktop. Okay, so let me just check. So obviously I'm running OBS actually to record this desktop, and I have tilex open for HTOP, and I'm running 1.28 gig, 1.27 gig of my 8 gig of RAM, and about 30, just over 30% of CPU usage. So you can see actually that whilst it's lighter than GNOME, it's not light by any means. So it is a kind of medium resource system, I would say. Obviously you are getting some of the kind of slickness of the GNOME look with Budgie, but you're not getting quite the high memory usage of GNOME as a desktop experience. And I can tell you that without OBS running and just running on its own, it does sit in and around 850 meg of my 8 gig usage, which is not too bad if there are no other applications running. So yeah, 1.27 gig of RAM, and as you can see, just over 30% of CPU usage on here as well. So what's my overall impression of this, whilst I just take a look at the backgrounds that are available? Oh, the Budgie Control Center as well. I should perhaps say a little about that. The Budgie Control Center is very neat, very tidy. All of the essential controls are in here. If I just click on About, you get a little bit more information about the system that you're running. So it's Budgie version 10.6.4. It's a X11 Windows system. Here you can also check for Windows updates, Ubuntu updates as well. But it's quite a nice little control center. Everything in here seems to be nicely grouped together. So that's pretty neat. It doesn't seem to have support for multi-gesture on the trackpad, which is a little bit of a shame, I think. But other than that, it's pretty decent, and there's a good system sound control panel as well on here too. Online accounts you can link into Google, Nextcloud, Microsoft Exchange, Last.fm, IMAP and SMTP, or you can link into an enterprise login with Kerberos. So if you were using this for some reason in the enterprise, like Windows AD or something like that, then you could link into that too. Yeah, so what do I think of this version of Budgie? Well, actually, Ubuntu Budgie 22.10, I have to say, it's very stable. It doesn't offer anything remarkable in terms of groundbreaking wise. You know, this isn't really breaking the mold in any respect. But what it does offer is a stable experience and a fairly slick, well working experience. So for example, the OBS I installed, everything was working out of the box, everything just worked. The microphone, camera, sometimes I have to fiddle around with things to get things working, but it all just works. Also working within OBS, the way it tightly integrates with the rest of the desktop is very nice. It does feel like quite a nice, tightly integrated desktop experience. So given that it's not offering anything groundbreaking, but it is such a nice desktop experience, it really does feel like it gets out of the way when you are using applications, so that you can really focus in on the application that you are using. And given the effort that has gone into things like the customization and the theme layouts and the way it all seems to work so tightly together, I would say I'd give this perhaps a 3.5 to 4 out of 5. I was going to say 4 out of 10 then. A 4 out of 5, let's say 4 out of 5 for Ubuntu Budgie 22.10. So I hope you've enjoyed this review, and it's good to be back again, even if my voice is not quite all there yet. It's good to be back. So hopefully if you've enjoyed this review, then please like and subscribe. Great to see your comments as well. If you've used Ubuntu Budgie, what your experience of it is, that would be great to find out. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.